Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to continue now with Parsha Shears, Shiurim, and I'm going to do one thing. First I need to make a bracha. Bracha ta Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam she'al nea bidvaro. Last time you saw me drink without saying a bracha, I had said a bracha before I started the video. And so, but you wouldn't have known that. I'm supposed to tell you I already made a bracha. That's what one of my rabbis once said. You always have to tell people I already said a bracha so they don't think you made a bracha without, you drank or ate without making a bracha. In any event, we're going to do two parshas this week. This one will be on mattos, and then we'll have one on Masai on Thursday night. I'm going to skip the second part of Pinchas for the sake of brevity and time. We'll do it. Hopefully all of us will be around next year when Pinchas rolls around, and we'll do that second part then. Here we have two parshas to end Sefer B'Midbar, Mattos and Masai. So what I want to say from Mattos is the following. This is from Rav Meir Kahana. This is his Chiddush. It's not written anywhere, and he darshaned it out himself from the Rambam and other sources. Okay, so in Parshas Mattos, Hashem tells the Jewish people to take revenge on Midian for what they did at the end of Parshas Balak, what they did to Klal Yisrael to seduce them and get them into Avodah Zorah and into Znus, immorality. And so go take your revenge. Go take vengeance from them. And Moshe says to the people, okay, we got to take vengeance for Hashem. But Hashem said, take vengeance for yourselves, for Israel, B'nai Yisrael. And so the two go together. Whenever the Jewish people have a downfall, or somebody causes a downfall, spiritually or physically, it's a chilul Hashem. And it ruins the honor of Hashem, and so we have to take vengeance for what our enemies did to us, whether they're Jewish enemies or Gentile enemies, doesn't make a difference. We have to take vengeance. And so we do it for Hashem, and Hashem tells us to get it for ourselves because He's concerned for our honor and our glory also, because that reflects His kingdom and His kingship and rulership over us and in the entire world. So Hashem says, take 1,000 from every tribe, minus the 1,000 from the Shevet Levi, who usually do not go to war. There are exceptions, and great Levim warriors that did go in the time of David HaMelech, for example, and even Kohanim, who could have been the Kohen Gadol. We'll talk about him another time. But anyway, go get vengeance. So they go and they do it. And they come back with captives, the spoil of the 5 Midianite city-states that they conquered and vanquished and put to the sword all the men. And they brought back the women. And Pinchas led the war, took he was given the honor and the title of the Kohen L'Milchama, the Kohen that leads out to battle, to war, whereas Elazar was the Kohen Gadol. And they come back with the women, and Hashem says, "What are you?" And Moshe Rabbeinu says to them, "What are you doing? Why'd you leave the women alive?" And Pinchas says to him, "We didn't know we were supposed to kill them. We did exactly what you instructed us to do. That's what we did." And the question is, Rameir says, what do you mean? If you look into this week's Parsha, there's no instructions given by Moshe what to do in the war. It says, go get vengeance. And they go and they attack Midian and killed Bilam and killed the 5 kings that sent out their daughters and their princesses even to get Klal Yisrael to sin, which is a downfall where they knew. Balak was told this by Bilam, that it'll make you conquer them because Hashem hates immorality. And if you do get them to do immorality, You might vanquish them completely, or at least get them weak enough without Hashem's support, so that you can drive them off like you wanted me to curse them to drive them off. But now, this is a better way. You get them to sin, and Hashem is not with them anymore. So Rameir says there's nothing here in Parshas Mattos that would tell you, that would inform you of what Moshe told them to do as part of this war. And what Pinchas meant, therefore, was not something Moshe told him on the spot before they left, but how he had taught them how to go to war in general. The two separate categories, two specific categories of types of wars that the Jewish people fight. One is a voluntary war, Milchemet Reshut, a voluntary war. Not everybody has to go, and there are those who are putter that can go back from the lines and don't have to contribute because either they're too scared or they just got married, just have a new house, just have a new vineyard. They're putter. It's a voluntary war. They don't have to go. Voluntary wars are when Klal Yisrael go out to another nation outside the borders of Eretz Yisrael and extend the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael and or vanquish these idolaters and these pagans and strip them of their property and set at least the men to the sword, like Pinchas did. Here he thought this was what the type of war he was sent to do. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, they hadn't even entered into Eretz Yisrael yet. They were in the desert still, in the Midbar. And here he's instructed to go and kill them in a different place than Eretz Yisrael. So he thought this is a Milchemet Reshut. This is a war, a voluntary war, a non-obligatory war. And that's what he tells Moshe. Now the other side of the coin is an obligatory war, a Milchemet Chovah, or better known as Milchemet Mitzvah, a commanded war, an obligatory war. And the Rambam lists the three types of wars that this involves, where everyone is obligated to go. Nobody is patur. The fearful that you don't want them to ruin the morale of the people and get them scared, they may be excused, but not to go home. They have to stay behind the lines and help out with the women in cooking the food or in taking care of the wounded or whatever it may be. But they don't have to go to the front and fight. They're too scared and they're going to frighten everybody else. They don't have the courage, but they still have to go. So this Milchemet Chovah, Milchemet Mitzvah, this obligatory war, is the following three types or following three occasions that Klal Yisrael is faced with our enemies. One is to conquer the land of Israel from the Canaanim, the 7 nations. Initially, Avraham Avinu was promised the nations of 10 Canaanite nations. And since we did the Chet Egel, the golden calf in the Midbar, and had to stay an extra 40 years in the desert, so we lost 3 of them. The lands that later were conquered by Edom, Esav, Moab, and Ammon, conquered from those 3 Canaanites in basically the Jordan and Saudi Arabia areas. But we have the tribes of 7.5 of their nations that we did conquer inside Eretz Yisrael, west, a little bit east of the Jordan, in the case of last week's parsha with Sichon and Og. They were Amorim, which is a Canaanite, Canaanite nation. We conquered them, and we conquered another 7 within the land of Eretz Yisrael itself, proper, under Yoshua. That, the Rambam says, Maimonides says, is the first of our obligatory wars, that everyone is required between 20 and 60 to go to those wars. Anyone under 20 or over 60 may fight if they're fit and able, and that's a judgment for the generals. But the 20 to 60-year-olds are all obligated unless they're not well, or they're not mentally fit, or they're not physically fit, whatever it might be. But the 20 to 60-year-olds are on the hook for these wars. They're the ones numbered in the midbar, in the censuses that were always taken. They're the ones who receive a nachla, a portion of the land of Eretz Yisrael. They're the ones who are obligated to fight for it. That's the first Milchemet Mitzvah. Second Milchemet Mitzvah is Amalek. Whenever it is that the Navi tells us from Hashem to conquer and destroy and wipe out completely to the last man and last animal and last woman and last child of Amalek, that's the second type of Milchemet Mitzvah. We've blown it every time we were told to do this. We didn't do it completely. Even under Moshe Rabbeinu and Yoshua in the desert, before the giving of the Torah, we had a war with Amalek. But there, Hashem didn't want us to finish them off yet for whatever reason. We could have. But Hashem left them alive. At that point, they still were chayev. They had still destroyed Hashem's ability to be king over the world, the entire world, 3,300 years ago, when they fought us and cooled us off, so to speak, so that the other nations of the world weren't afraid of us anymore, or weren't as afraid of Hashem as they were after Kriyas Yamsuf. They basically all took off their crowns and said, who can fight with this God? And they were going to go over to Moshe Rabbeinu and hand him their crowns and say, you're the king of the world. We will serve you. And it didn't work out because Amalek went to war to prove that it wasn't over yet. They didn't have to surrender. And they didn't have to give up the hope that they could rule the world themselves without the Jewish people imposing the Torah law upon the whole world, at least for the Shavim Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, that even that they didn't want to keep. They wanted to be free to do what they wanted. So that's the second one. The third one is a rather obvious one. The Rambam says any invading army that comes to conquer the land of Israel, or even to take tribute and not conquer, not kill and not conquer, even to take straw and hay for their animals as fodder, and just as a token of your, meaning our, conceding to them that they're, paying tribute to them, that they're in charge, they are the rulers over us. Any of those situations is a Milchemet Mitzvah. It's a Chil Hashem not to fight them, and therefore it's an obligatory war that everyone has to fight to stave off the Romans or the Greeks or whoever is coming to invade our land and conquer us. So those are the three Milchemet Mitzvah, and the one idea of the Milchemet Reshut, the voluntary war, that they have to go only if they want to outside Eretz Yisrael to conquer the nations there and make them vassal states to the king of Israel, David HaMelech or whoever. So that's what we have. And that's all Pinchas knew. And he's saying that we did what you said to do, and of the two types of mitzvot, of a voluntary war or an obligatory war, this was a voluntary war. We chose to take vengeance. We were ordered by God to do it, but it still comes in the category and the type of war that is a voluntary war. Choose out 1,000. We're not taking all the 11 or 12 tribes, 13 tribes. We're not taking everybody out to war. We're just going with a limited number of an army from each tribe. And it's outside of Eretz Yisrael. It's in Midian. It's in the desert and in Midian. So, which is in Saudi Arabia, and across from the Mount Har Sinai was a place where Midian, where Moshe Rabbeinu lived with Yisro before he was chosen to go redeem the Klal Yisrael from Egypt, from Mitzrayim. So anyway, Moshe had to explain to him, no. There's a third type of category, and I don't know if Rabbi Kahana is right. I don't know why the Rambam doesn't mention this meforish. Why doesn't he explicitly mention that there's a third type of commandment of war, which is called a war of vengeance, Milchemet Nikama. And he explained to Pinchas that Milchemet Nikama is a type of war that what you do to the enemy to exact the vengeance, to take your revenge, depends on what they did to you. So, for example, in this case, they seduced us with their women, so their women have to be killed. And ultimately it was decided that all these Midianite women would walk in front of the Aron HaKodesh, and if the Aron turned green or their faces turned green, that showed they were of the age of sexuality and could have been one of the women that engaged in this, getting us to sin, seducing us to sin in avodah zarah, idolatry, and in znus, immorality. And therefore you put them to death now, here in the desert. And the little girls who are not shaykh yet to have done this, because they are not sexually involved, because they're too young, you can keep them alive, but you're not going to touch them. You're not going to marry them. They're going to be servants for you, for your families, or for Klal Yisrael, for the king. They're going to be maid servants, and that's all they're going to be. And you can keep alive. But the boys over 13 and all the men, you have to put them to death. The women, only the ones who might have been possibly of the ones who came over here to get us to sin. They're the ones you should have killed and known to kill, because they're the ones who caused this downfall for us. I know their fathers and the kings of the princesses put them up to it, but we killed them already. But they actually did the deed of making us sin with them, to the point where Klal Yisrael was severely punished. A big megefa, a big plague broke out to kill 24,000 Jews, mostly from the tribe of Shimon, who mostly did this avera. And it was a terrible downfall and a terrible embarrassment, a chilul Hashem. And the only way Rabbi Kahana says to remove a chilul Hashem is by doing a kiddush Hashem, by putting these women to death and showing that the world, that there is justice, there is a judge, and there is justice, and Hashem rules the world. And we, in fact, Moshe Rabbeinu begged Hashem after this great sin. He was already supposed to have gone up to the mountain and died already, but he said, please, Hashem, let me live to see the vengeance of Hashem and restoring of order here, please. And then that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was told. Okay, you can live to see this, and then you're going to go to your people, you're going to die and go to Gan Eden, to Shemayim. It wasn't immediate like that. He didn't die in this week's parsha. Hashem gave him another, from the beginning of Parshas Devorim to start Sefer Devorim, is a long speech of saying goodbye and blessing the people and reviewing the history and giving them a Musar Shmuz, what's the word I'm looking for? Exhorting them to keep the mitzvahs and not fall into avodah zarah, especially to stay with Hashem. And he was given an extra 37 days to give over all the parshas in Sefer Devorim until the end. And then on the 7th of Adar, which is his birthday, but it was also the day, Zion Adar is the day of his yortzeit. So he died on that day, and they mourned him for 30 days. And then they crossed the Yarden with Yoshua, kept the Pesach, first did Bris Milah in Mass for those who had not done for 38 years. Bris Milah in the desert. Then they had the Pesach, and then they started the plans in Sefer Yoshua to conquer, and the walls of Yericho came tumbling down, etc., starting the campaign of the southern flank of Eretz Yisrael to conquer the southern kings and then the northern kings, 31 kings in all. That's the sequence of events here. But it all stemmed from their first getting revenge from Midian in this week's Parsha. And Chazal say Moshe could have lived another few years had he not taken the vengeance immediately. And he could have kept going and stayed the course and stayed alive. We need more training. We need to get the CIA over here to train us in the midbar. We need new weapons. He could have thought of a million excuses to stay alive another day, another week. But he didn't. He said the glory and honor of Hashem is on the ground. And because I want to live an extra few weeks, I should delay the Kiddush Hashem. And he didn't. He went immediately, even though he knew it spelled his death when they got back. And that was the way it was. Another time we'll talk about the different levels of Kiddush Hashem. Rav Meir Kahana has a 3-step process of what it means to do a Kiddush Hashem, to remove a Chilul Hashem, or to just make a Kiddush Hashem in the world. And I add on 2 other points to make this a category of what it is, what it takes, what is required of us in order to truly be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim Barabim. And, this is long enough as is already. It's already 20 minutes long, more than 20 minutes long. So I'll save this teaching for another time. And I'll wish you a good Shabbos early. And then a couple of days from now, I'm going to take it and do parshas Masai in order to set the other parsha down, that we have something to talk about and learn about over Shabbos for parshas Masai to end Sefer B'Midbar. So I'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye. Oh, I like to say at the end of my various drushas, parsha drushas, I like to say, Od Avinu Chai, our Father in heaven is still alive, so we shouldn't lose hope. And then Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people are immortal people. We can never be destroyed because Hashem made a covenant with Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and with us at Har Sinai. And therefore we are eternal and we can never be destroyed. No power on earth can destroy the Jewish people completely. They can kill a lot of us, but they can't destroy the Jewish people as an entity in this world because of God's promise to us and power protecting us, and the strength of His promise and oath to make us His people is invincible and is eternal, and He can keep His promise. He doesn't lose out. There's no way Hashem can be forced to fail in keeping His promise. And we'll talk about this another time also. What does this mean? But anyway, and then I like to finally finish off and say Od Kahana Chai, because if we keep increasing our learning of His works, Reb Binyamin and Reb Meir, then the great teachings and the great Torah that came from Rabbi Kahana and his son Binyamin lives on and is passed to another generation. And that's what we say, Od Kahana Chai. And if you rearrange the words of Od Kahana Chai, you get Koach, which was, when Kach was banned, he was going to come back and run in 1992 and call his new party Koach. And it just happens to be, if you rearrange the letters, it's Od Kahana Chai, O-K Chai. So Od Kahana Chai, Koach, means strength. And that's what we need, strength right now to get through all these ups and downs, upheavals, and dangerous times. We need to dig deep with our spiritual emunah and betachon in Hashem, and in our commitment, determination to fight anyone who comes to destroy us, whether from the right or the left, whether from Jews or Gentiles, inside Israel or outside Israel. We stand firm in our commitment to Hashem and His Torah, and to the principles that we're taught of this Torah, pointed out to us by Rabbi Kahana, because of the fact that nobody else taught it. It's all there. He's not making anything up. These things are not his opinion. They completely came from his knowledge of how to learn Torah properly and pull out from the Torah these concepts and these words, and he did so. He tried to get people, all these rabbis and gedolim around him, please show me where I'm wrong. Please tell me, slug me up. Destroy my argument here on X, Y, or Z, on the lack of that it's usher to do land for peace, and that they have to go, and the Torah says you're not allowed to have any Gentiles here, even if they were Swedes and peaceful and very docile. They still can't stay. So we'll talk about that another time also. That was Rabbi Kahana. Nobody ever answered him because nobody could answer him. You would think they would try and do so just to get rid of him because they were embarrassed by him, because they were too frightened of the Israeli government to stand up and say land for peace is usher, forbidden, it's a chilul Hashem, and so they compromised themselves, and they compromised the Torah, which is a sin, and which is a chilul Hashem, and which is one of the tenets of no compromise, which we'll see in another time, when the 5-step, his 3 steps plus my 2 steps of what comprise a chilul Hashem, and what comprises a kiddush Hashem against that, to rectify that chilul Hashem. And there are 5 principles. 3 that he said and 2 that I add on, and we'll get to that. So, okay. Od Avinu Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Od Kahana Chai. Talk to you later.